I use the expression emotional obesity as a precursor to physiological or physical obesity. Now, what does that speak to? Similar to what I was saying about the mother who wasn't listening to her son, there's something unexpressed. If something's unexpressed, then it is accumulating. So if we look at that energy in Ayurveda, which is part of my work, and for people who aren't familiar, it's sort of an Indian healing methodology, which is akin to Chinese medicine. It looks at elements, and it's in Ayurvedic terms, it's part of the Vedas, which is associated with yoga, just to give a context. So there's something called samprapti, which is a word that speaks to the 6 stages of disease. And it's a beautiful system, as far as I'm concerned, and it certainly transformed my life. The first stage of disease is accumulation, where we accumulate. Now, within the context of Ayurveda, it's really looking at the physiology. So when we accumulate too much air element or fire element or earth and water element, there's going to be an imbalance. So that's the second stage, is now it becomes aggravating. So let's take one example. If somebody has too much heat, they have spicy food, alcohol, stressful situations, there's too much heat in the system. It's accumulating. The aggravation will be now they start to get sour belching, acid reflux, heartburn, and then it will start to spread as the third stage. Now, we don't need to go through the whole system, but the point is it all starts with accumulation. So now if we look at our, dear human friends out there who are struggling with a weight accumulation, my assertion through my lens is what's actually happened is they've accumulated a lot of trauma, emotions that haven't been expressed, and they live within the construct subconsciously, usually of I don't feel loved. I don't feel loved, I don't feel accepted, or I don't feel wanted. There's some discard, which makes that human being feel completely isolated, separate from the whole. And that's a miserable place to live, and they found comfort in food. Now, that's a generalization, but a lot of people are going to be able to resonate with that. So what that will look like is, as when I was a younger child, I was made fun of. I was picked on at school, or perhaps my parents were somewhat absent because they were busy, or they were just struggling with their own things. And I never felt held as a child. And I found the comfort that I was looking for in a care provider in food instead. And food is probably the biggest drug, right? It's something that we obviously do every day. And so that became a vicious cycle where whenever I feel any sense of dis-ease, I was never given the tools or the environment to be held. And so I accumulated my own unexpressed hurt and sadness and fear. And I found comfort by just eating. So that both speaks to the emotional eating component, but also just the dynamic of how we want to, as human beings, avoid pain and seek pleasure. So both are going on there, right? So I'm in a state of pain. There's no one really around me in my environment or my family to listen to my point earlier and let me express and feel sad and be held where I feel comforted. So my pain has been transmuted into a pleasure that I found through substance, in this case food. And then it becomes a vicious cycle where it now speaks to the language component, which is it might have started as a feeling deep-seated of I'm inadequate, I'm not loved, I'm not wanted, that then physiologically started to be expressed as somebody who societally is now rejected, because obviously it's not good to be fat, right? You're not going to be the picked one. So now it's a vicious cycle where you're reinforcing the belief of inadequacy, and now you use language to actually misidentify with your physical form. To your point, if somebody says, I am fat, or I am overweight, what they're saying is, I am this meat suit. Now it becomes very difficult because you're actually saying who I am is this. And so to try and lose this would be to lose yourself, which is impossible. It's like trying to lift yourself up by your bootstraps. So that's where it becomes insidious, right? It becomes incredibly difficult because there's the deep subconscious feelings of inadequacy and separation that then fuel the escape mechanisms to which I then become identified. And then because of even more self-judgment, I feel there's something wrong with me and I'm bad and I have to do something against that, which creates a lot of pressure and a lot of heaviness. Like if I come up to you and say, you have to do this, you're going to resist. Right? Yeah. So when we're doing that to ourselves, oh, I'm a loser, I have to do this, we're creating more heaviness energetically, emotionally, and then physically in our body. So that's the cascade, right? And so how do we undo that? Well, it comes back to what I said earlier about a lot of love and compassion and acceptance, but at least undoing my association with my physical form. If I can see that who I am is an expression of life, I am the only expression of life that is me, my perspective. And as far as I'm concerned, that warrants love and acceptance. That warrants reverence. There's no other you out there. And to start to change that relationship with ourself And they probably will need some support and help to recognize, okay, what were the breakdowns in your relationship? Where was the absence of love and acceptance as you grew up? That to me is that's the real loss that needs to happen. It's not the loss of weight, but the loss of feelings of inadequacy, the loss of the absence of love. It may seem like a segue, but I think it relates. I'm helping a client currently go through a divorce. And her conditioning was to be the nurturer and the provider. And in many regards, we could say they have 2 children together, but we've sort of recognized she kind of has 3 children by virtue of the way she relates to her husband and who he is. No slight on him, but she had become a care provider for him too. And that's why they didn't have a passionate relationship or an equal relationship. She'd got the mothering instincts for 2 children and then also a grown man. And she said, I'm really struggling with divorcing this person because of those patterns. And I said, just consider you're not divorcing him. You're divorcing the version of yourself that attracted him. Yeah. Now, if you understand that, it's so profound. And for her, it was the access to a much easier path forward, because she's like, wow, like it feels like a shedding. I'm letting go of a part of me that felt it was my responsibility to take care of everybody, which was a reflection of her childhood where she had to take care of her mother because her mum was sick. And she just started to play that role even with her own husband. So she was letting go of that identity of herself, which gives her an immense amount of freedom, not thinking that she's responsible for this grown man's life, which is also a disservice to him. He's capable. He just didn't need to be with her because she took care of everything, right? So if we look at that as a comparison to somebody who's quote unquote dealing with obesity, it's not the weight they have to lose. It's the image of themselves that they're looking to shed that has got these connotations of inadequacy, of not being acceptable, of not being loved. That is the real weight loss opportunity. Because when they let go of that, they find a new sense of love and compassion for themselves, which is the precursor to a new body. Who you are is an expression of pure love and pure possibility, looking through a lens of inadequacy, insecurity, and scarcity, which led to a behavioral adaptation where I found comfort in food. Now, if you look at that cascade, and we come back to what did I say at the beginning? You are an expression of love and pure possibility. It is purely based on the view you have of yourself and life, that I'm not loved by society, I'm not wanted, that who I am in my relationship to myself is inadequate. That lens, it's a lens that I look through, gives me the experience of sadness, isolation, depression, hopelessness, worthlessness. From that perspective, I am going to be in a position of pain from which I've found relief in food. Now, if we lift off that lens, if we remove the lie that there is something wrong with you, that you're not loved, you're not accepted, then there is relief. And in relief, I don't need to find comfort in food. So yes, to your point, they could say who I am currently is somebody who, based on my conditioning, has accumulated excess calories over time that expresses as a bigger body. That's the physics. But the why is because of the way that I view myself as somehow less than, as somehow inadequate. And that's the thing to really look at. Is it true that who you are is somehow not enough? It might feel that way. You may have expressed yourself your entire life that way, but I would assert it is not a truth. And in the absence of that self-deprecating view of yourself, if that is gone, then people feel such an immense weight loss emotionally. Like everybody I work with says, gosh, I feel so much lighter. Yeah. And that is an energetic / emotional precursor to then their body reflecting that.